Welcome to the Stewart Squared podcast. We have the honor of having Bill Gross here, and Bill Gross and my dad go back a long way, and I'm excited to figure out all the little intersections, particularly about the PC industry and the early internet and everything else. So welcome to the show, Bill.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So we were talking about what to talk to you about before we started talking to you. So a little bit circular reference, but the first, I met you before. I think I met you at PC Forum, like, way back. But the first thing I noticed that you did was you wrote a search program for the PC, which searched the hard disk really fast, like way faster than anything that had come before. And I'm wondering if you can reflect on that, given that we're talking about large language models and, petabytes of data, even beyond that, googs of data here on the internet, and you were searching like a 5 megabyte hard disk. What led you to do that?
Yeah, that's a great recollection you have. It was called Lotus Magellan, and it was a product to help you search all the files on your hard disk. And that's because email was just starting to explode, for me at least. It was CC mail, and if you remember that one.
Oh, yeah.
And Lotus Express email, both internal projects at Lotus. And I just had so many articles that I had read and news stories and emails that I wanted to search. And I wanted to make something that was indexing it in real time so that as you type something, you could find it very, very quickly. And I felt that was something that everybody needed. And we sold hundreds of thousands of copies of that product. And it was really fun to develop that at Lotus. And it's still important today, obviously, maybe more important. But there was something else that we worked on. I was thinking about this just the other day. It was never released, but it was a product we were going to make after Lotus Magellan. It was going to be a product that we called Lotus Organize. And it was going to take your content and summarize it for you by extracting out the key elements, basically what ChatGPT can do now. And we were only about 40 years off in terms of when you could actually do that.
So why didn't it work? Why didn't it work?
Well, we were trying to figure out ways that you could read an article and look for the key elements in the phrases and look for the key verbs and adjectives and figure out how to get the essence of an article in bullet points. And we could do an okay job of it, but obviously a large language model is processing way, way more and actually has a deeper understanding. So when I see that happening today, I laughed just the other day when I was thinking, boy, we were trying that. And yet that was wanted back then, but the breakthroughs of neural nets have led to that possibility today.
Yeah, that was actually before neural nets.
Yeah. That was really
neural nets
early.
were before the internet, and that was before neural nets. In fact, there was an AI boom in the 80s. With all those companies clustered around Boston. And that was about natural language, and trying to remember if there was another component to it. But
yeah,
in fact,
well, you're even missing my first product, even before Lotus Magellan. The reason I got to Lotus was because I had started a product that I called HAL for Human Access Language, and it was a natural language interface to Lotus 123. And I started that company with my brother here in Pasadena, and then Lotus acquired the company. So that's why we moved back to Boston to work for Lotus.
Yes, I did forget that.
The way we did natural language back then was very, very crude and different, but it was like a parser that would look at your sentence and try and look for keywords. And if you said sort by column C, it would understand that sort was the same as order, was the same as alphabetize. So we had to make up a vocabulary of 2,000 words that people use in a spreadsheet. So it was a very blunt instrument, but it was early natural language. And you're right. People were talking about that back in the 80s, but it was just fulfilled most recently.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't have enough data. It's so part of what comes up with Magellan is that you're trying to index all the stuff that's being added to the hard disk. And there's this kind of dividing line between what's in the operating system and what's in an application. You're really operating at what is ultimately now part of the file system for any desktop operating system. Is that an accurate thing to say?
Exactly right. And it's just amazing to see both how early that was, how useful it was even back then, but how primitive. I mean, it really is incredible where things have gone.
And we could even go to, this made Bill Gates really jealous, and he tried to create an operating system that would index everything in real time and provide knowledge to you. And
Yep.
if I remember correctly, that project failed.
Yeah. And there was in those days, there was a whole war going on between the graphical user interface,
Mm.
both what Apple had released, what Lotus was trying to do to retrofit that into Lotus 123, and then also OS 2 versus
OS2.
Microsoft working on Windows.
Yeah. 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 No, that OS2 was IBM's like they had a serious kernel, and I think it was
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was based on. Maybe even
Yeah.
System
Yeah.
360.
So
But
wait,
But we're talking like a bunch of old timers now. We should probably
yeah, I
catch
know.
up.
so,
Oh
so
my God, do you remember the
no, and I love it too because and this happens many times on this show, which is that all of these things don't make sense to me. Like why was the GUI? Why was there a war going on between the GUI and Lotus and OS 2? Like what was, for those of us who don't know what's going on, what was the sort of meta angle? Like what were you guys trying to do at this moment? Like what were the things behind the things that you're trying to do?
Well, people wanted to make a more natural user interface, but the processing power just wasn't really there. We
Mm,
had a 4.7 gigahertz Intel processor, and to try and draw things on the screen in real time and have windows move as you drag them
yeah.
and have everything scale, fonts, everything, it was very hard. So it was a trick to who was going to be able to pull it off in a good enough way. And in fact, it took Windows many iterations, like Windows 1.0 and 2.0 and 3.0, and then finally Windows 95 finally was good enough to actually be usable. But Microsoft was willing to stick with it that long. That was what was
Mm.
incredible. The DOS franchise gave them enough money to stick with it for a very long time.
DOS franchise. Okay, that's a whole other point.
just Stuart,
Yeah,
let me explain
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
The thing that IBM licensed from Microsoft was called MS-DOS. It was actually a operating system that had been built for a green screen environment. So it was a command line. So you had to open files and stuff, you'd have to type. And but IBM licensed that from them, but didn't restrict them, so they could license it to anybody else. IBM didn't imagine that somebody else would try to copy their machine, but it turned out there were like over 100 companies that did it. Compaq and Osborne. So we were just talking about
Compaq,
Osborne. Well,
Osborne,
actually,
Dell, everyone.
that was
Yeah,
CPM. So
yeah,
that
yeah.
was
But
different operating.
but Microsoft licensed it, I believe, for around $7 a copy. So
Yeah.
Microsoft effectively had a $7 royalty on every single PC that was sold and every single PC clone that was sold. So
Yeah.
that gave them money to have sticking power to stick
So
with these new ideas for a long
that's
time.
what turned Microsoft into a juggernaut was the licensing deal between IBM and Microsoft to take MS-DOS and license it out to all these different manufacturers in order to build the software, in order to build the software on top of the hardware. And that was the
Yeah,
explosion of the PC industry in terms of the
yeah.
1980s.
Yeah,
So
Microsoft
there was a
started out as an operating system company, but then used that money to begin making applications. And they made
Mm.
Excel and they made Word. They made Excel to compete with Lotus 123, which was number one. They made Word to compete with WordPerfect, which was number one. And one by one, they picked off the applications because they just were
a
willing to
little
stick to it.
a little nugget there is that they made Excel for the Macintosh before they made it for the
Yeah,
PC,
right,
and
right.
dominated the Macintosh, which didn't mean that much at the time, but they figured
Yeah,
out how to build a good spreadsheet. Um,
yeah. But look at
so
what Microsoft has done now in AI,
Yeah.
going all the way forward. Satya has done an incredible job growing that company, both in with Azure into the cloud, with AI, with their investments in OpenAI and everything they're doing there. And then, of course, everything they've done in the enterprise has really cemented their place in
so that's
history.
great that you just brought that up because Stuart and I have been talking about this. But on the last earnings call, Satya basically said, we don't have to chase the capex that everybody else is doing. So we're going to keep our capex flat. And meanwhile, Google and OpenAI and Facebook are all spending megabucks building these
Yeah.
server farms and XAI, and and are chasing the NVIDIA chips. And it feels like Satya just pulled off a really interesting twist. Like,
Yeah.
nah, this isn't going to pay off long term, so we'll just trade on what everybody else has.
Yeah,
Not even
I
just
think
OpenAI.
Yeah, I think he's made a call that could be a brilliant one, which
Yeah.
is the foundational models are all approaching somewhat parity. So investing further there to have a differential is not worth it. But building on top of them, building applications on top of them for the enterprise is where the money will be. And he even recently said, what I care about is a 10% productivity gain, not a 10% improvement in the foundational model. And a 10% productivity gain
Mm.
is where they want to invest. And I think it's smart. I think it probably will pay off.
So
But
in
there'll
this
be many places that people make money with AI for sure.
And this
right
relates
now.
to the show, because I fundamentally think that LLMs are not software. They're something that takes software and does something with it, but it feels like what it really is a prosthetic, a cognitive prosthetic on our productivity.
Yep.
And it's brilliant that you talked about the GUI, because the GUI was a similar shift, right? Because you're talking about MS-DOS, the command line interface. Yeah. All of a sudden you have a visual representation that allows normies, allows people to just, from anywhere, interact with the computer in ways that no one was doing before that with the command line interface. Maybe that's a good avenue.
Well, I don't think it's a proper technical analogy, but it's a proper business analogy. Ooh. In that the operating system was the underlying layer that everybody had to work with. Then the applications people built on top of it were the differentiation and where the real value ended up being. And I think that's what Microsoft is doing again. And the value that's obviously been created in AI has been faster than anything we've ever seen. I was looking back at some of the numbers, and the internet grew like crazy in the 90s, and I was really participating in that. But I think there was something like $8 to $10 billion of revenue by 2000, after 8 to 10 years of rapid internet growth. And now one company alone, OpenAI, has $10 billion of revenue, like that. And of course, the total revenue from all AI right now is in the hundreds of billions. So the idea, and that's been in just a few years, let alone a whole decade. So this is going way faster. And the investment amount.
So Bill, I have to ask you, I've decided I can't keep up with it. Like Claude 3.5 versus OpenAI 04, I'm lost. I can't, they change things, but they're not changing that much. And so I'm kind of at that point where it's like the internet bubble was in 2000, that, normal people can't keep track of it. And if they can't keep track of it, then the differentiation just goes poof.
Yeah. Well, I have one other analogy that you lived through with me, Stuart. So I remember in the 80s when every 2 weeks a yellow page size book of PC Magazine would come out. And I would get that magazine from the newsstand, and I would quickly look through it to look what new happened in the last 2 weeks, and what new exciting product did someone come up with that might disrupt something else, or new memory card, or a new way of plugging into the PC. And then in the internet, that was happening every 2 days. And then now it's happening every 2 hours. Like
there you go. Bingo.
So it went from a weekly to hourly to now. If I have to check Twitter right now to see what just happened 15 minutes ago with, like you said, a new release of Claude, or DeepSeek comes out, or China did this.
And it already happened just now with Baidu just released their own DeepSeek killer. So it's
I could go have breakfast and miss that, and it's incredible how fast it's going. But and the whole world is involved. It's not just like Silicon Valley; it's the whole world. And there's $1 billion of investment per day going into AI. $1 billion per day. The whole internet wasn't worth $1 billion back in the 90s, and now there's $1 billion per day going in. So it's just a new world.
Let's go into that. What as the PC industry, at what point did the globe get involved, and what did it feel like to be from this like you guys are just messing around with your computers and everything, to all of a sudden, oh, this is like a global thing? What did that feel like?
I felt the turning point, like the firing shot, was Netscape and the Netscape IPO in 1995. That wasn't when it fully happened. It took a while for the whole globe to get involved. But by 2000, actually, right around the time of the crash, we're 25 years almost to the day from the crash in March of 2000. But it was right then that all the investment had been made to put the fiber out to connect the world. And we became a single planet because of the dot-com boom. The crash sent the valuations lower, but not the usage. Like I often talk about this, like the usage of the internet every day was going up. The utility every day was going up. The number of users were going up. The value was going up, but there was a valuation drop for a few years because everybody was overexcited about it. But the utility went up every day continuously. And I think that if you look at the two turning points, I would say turning point number one was Netscape really allowing people to search from anywhere. Turning point number two was actually at the height of the crash, right when everything was built out now, and that set the stage for the next 2 decades.
And that thing that happened during that crash between 2000 and 2005 was Web 3.0, which is kind of a higher level of understanding of how to put a graphical interface on the internet, how to integrate
Yes.
it all to,
Yes.
an organized way. So
Mm.
there were two stages in the adoption of the
Yep,
internet.
I
One
agree.
was
And
what
there
was
was a point in that period from 2000 to 2005, just to show you how big the overreaction was. There were people who were telling me, Bill, you should just give up. Entrepreneurship is over. No one's going to be an entrepreneur anymore.
Yes.
You know, like there were actually people who were saying that.
Yes.
And of course, entrepreneurship blossomed in that period. And then when the iPhone came out, there was a whole new blossoming of new activity and new ideas. Who would have thought that GPS would lead to Uber, or that things like Airbnb would get formed, or social media because of the mobile device taking, and everybody in the world having a camera on them 24 hours a day, and now a high resolution camera. Like, it's insane the level of quality that they can pack into a half-inch little diameter thing that's approaching the quality of a DSLR. You know, like, it's crazy.
Approaching.
Yeah.
So the thing that led Stuart and I to start this podcast is Stuart kept asking me, is this relevant? Is all this stuff that we're talking about, the arrival of the personal computer, including the PC, and then the early internet, and then the more sophisticated internet, and then the mobile phone? So you talked about how fast things are happening every 2 hours now instead of every 2 days. But is the pattern the same?
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's lessons to be learned from that. Like, I like to think that having lived through those, I can make better decisions about the companies that I'm working on and hoping to change the world with now, because I've seen the movie before. And I'd like to think that that helps. Sometimes having a clean slate and not knowing how things went leads you to try new things in a good way. Obviously, there's always benefit to being naive as well. But I'm trying to at least take some of the lessons learned from the past and apply them today, like the one we're talking about, the value coming from these applications now built on foundational models, where the foundational models are like electricity or like DOS or like the operating system. If you don't see that, it might be harder to figure out where the value is going to lie.
Mm.
So you did a really interesting thing, is you started a company in 1994, I think, might have been 95, where you believe that search should make money off of every search.
Yes,
And
yes.
that was called GoTo?
Yeah, it was actually 1998. Let me tell you.
98, okay, so that's it.
Yeah. The evolution of that was, we started Idealab in 1996. I had these 12 ideas for companies, and I was going to try and start one of them. And I decided to start all 12 at once. And the way I started all 12 at once was build this new crazy thing called Idealab, an incubator, a startup studio, give a separate CEO capital for each one of the 12, but put them all under one roof and help them grow. And by 1998, we had about 25 companies. We already had a few IPOs of those companies, but all those companies were struggling to figure out what's the best, most cost-effective way to get traffic to them. And at the time, the way you got traffic to your company was you paid for a big sponsorship at Yahoo or at AOL, and you paid $3 million to be in the gardening section of AOL, or $5 million to be on the homepage of Yahoo. But they never would tell you how much traffic you were going to get. They never guaranteed you anything. It was just like throwing away money, like on a Super Bowl commercial, and hoping that it would work. And I really felt there should be a better way to get the focused traffic that you want. And search might be the way to do it if you could bid on the words that you cared about. Like, what if you could bid on keywords that you cared about? And my analogy was like a Yellow Pages, where you buy an ad in the right section of the Yellow Pages. Like, if you're a plumber, you bid on the word plumber. You know, if you're a stereo store, you bid on the word stereo. And right now, it had been where you were just buying on a CPM basis. You weren't able to bid on anything particular. So I had this idea for a search product where you could actually bid on keywords, and we called it goto.com. And I actually announced it in February of 1998 at the TED conference, because I'm blanking on the name of who was
Agenda Demo and/or PC Forum.
No, but the person who was the head of TED at that time in 1998.
Ricky Saul Werman. That was the original.
Richard Saul Werman asked me to show new ideas of search on stage. So I showed this idea, and people from the audience actually booed and hissed. Like, people were like, angry. You're going to try and put money into search? That's disgusting. And even the cover.
Why?
because search was so pure and the internet was supposed to be like free and
Oh,
not commercial, and
oh,
people are
interesting.
angry. Yeah.
Ooh, the
And,
cypherpunk. So
yeah,
you pissed off all the cypherpunk. Like people
yeah,
like
yes,
Steve
yes.
Jobs. Is that accurate? Steve
I
Jobs?
don't know if
No, no,
Steve,
Steve didn't really. Yeah, he didn't go to conferences. So.
Yeah.
the cover of the Wall Street Journal that day actually had an article that said that quoted Yahoo. Bill Gross is announcing this new thing in search. Yahoo says we will never ever put paid results in our search results. Like that's how opposed they were to it. But it took off like crazy. And soon we had a deal with AOL. And then 6 months later, we had a deal with Microsoft. And then 6 months after that, we had a $100 million deal with Yahoo. And then 2 years after that, they acquired the company for a couple $1 billion. So they went from we will never ever do it to we really need to do it to we
Better
want to
buy
own
it.
it. We better buy it.
So
But yeah, go ahead.
Now
I would
there's an
love to,
equivalency. Well, let me
yeah,
just ask
Yeah.
this. There's an equivalency because Google ended up dominating that business.
Yes.
And how did did they
yeah.
like see what you were doing and go, we got to do that?
Yeah, no. So 2 years later, Google came out, and then they were growing like crazy with their great relevance algorithm. Larry Page had come up with that PageRank algorithm that was fantastic, but no revenues. And then they needed a revenue model, so they copied this idea. They infringed on the patents, and they ended up acquiring the patents. They acquired the patents for like $360 million, which was a bargain. It was the biggest patent settlement at that time, but think about how little that is compared to $1 trillion of value. But we never thought it would be worth $1 trillion. Like we thought it was valuable, but not $1 trillion.
This is exactly what we're talking about. Like you're sitting here and you know that this stuff's going on with AI, but there's no way to tell what it is that's actually going to make the difference.
Yeah. So fast forward now 25 years later, I just started this company, Pro-rata, where we have where we're building Pro-rata ads to be AI generated ads that are using an LLM as opposed to a keyword, because an LLM can read an article with even better context than just a single keyword. And we just launched that last week, and hopefully that will be, well, we'll see if that's worth $1 trillion, but I think it'll be important to try and make advertising better.
Well, you're basically trying to remove friction. And a huge piece of friction right now is everybody suing everybody else because LLMs are using all the copyrighted material.
Yeah.
wait, but
So I'm excited about where things are going, but it's interesting that you bring up that story because that was very controversial when we came out with it, and of course now it's obvious.
Yeah.
And there's questions I want to ask about the past, but also this seems like a relevant thing for the future. And we actually, in our AI Whisperers group down here in Buenos Aires, somebody recently asked, like, what is the intersection between LLMs and paid advertising? Like, what is it? And it feels like the internet's that question.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to solve. So let me give you the example. You read an article in a magazine, Financial Times, or on the website, New York Times, about range anxiety. And people have range anxiety with electric vehicles. And in the middle of that article, there might be an ad for fish sticks or a Rolex watch or something completely irrelevant to that. Well, an LLM can read that article and say, oh, this is about range anxiety. You know, what I should show would be an electric vehicle that has long range. So maybe the Lucid Air with 510-mile range, that would be a better thing to tell the person right now. And if you make advertising so relevant that it's useful, people say, thank you. That's what I wanted to know about that. So we can help publishers make more money. We can help advertisers have a better ROI, and we can give users a better experience. And LLMs enable that for the first time.
So part of that would be, this is one of the issues with LLMs, and see if you agree with this. I've said this to Stuart a number of times. LLMs seem like the ultimate batch process, right? Yes. You go feed all this data into it, you munge it, and it takes you 6 months to produce something different. The example you're giving is much more real time. I mean, it is based on the idea of buying keywords, except you're buying relevance. And
you're buying a concept now. You're buying the whole. Basically, this LLM has been trained on words, and that takes 6 months. But to ask the question, so this is how our system works. We read an article. We use an LLM to ask a question. Of these 100,000 advertisers, what's the single best advertiser that matches the context of this article? That can be answered fast.
Okay.
And then we generate the ad for the advertiser on the fly at that moment. So it really is possible, and it's very exciting.
And is there a point at which is that reasoning?
Yes. Well, so that's a very good question. So let me tell you an example of something I saw. Right after I saw you in San Francisco, about a month later, I gave a talk at the Fortune Brainstorm AI conference, also in San Francisco. And I was, this is the question as, is it reasoning? I was practicing my talk and I was recording it with Otter and I had a transcript of the practice session. It's about 20 minutes long. The speech had never been given before. I didn't share it with anybody. ChatGPT couldn't have crawled it. No one has seen it. I've got a noisy transcript of it, and I hand it to ChatGPT, and I say, can you give me 10 suggestions for improving this talk? I'm about to give it. I would like 10 specific detailed improvements to this. And it came back in 5 seconds with 10 unbelievable things. And one of them, like the first one was, it looks like you're trying to make this certain point, but it's buried a little bit too far down in your speech. I would move it up earlier. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So what is that? That's not predicting the next word. I mean,
No.
it is. That's all it's really doing. But somehow
Emergent.
it was able to, in a speech it had never seen before,
Yeah.
give me things to do to it that would make it more effective. So is that reasoning or is it just a stochastic parrot? Well, I don't
Yeah.
care. It's still useful.
So it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I won't say it's AGI. I won't say it's conscious,
Yeah.
but it's incredible.
And this goes back to what happened with the social media. Would I be accurate in saying that both of you were taken by surprise by what happened with Facebook and all the other social media? It just came out of nowhere, right? Like no cyberpunk movie predicted that. No cyberpunk novel predicted that. Like it just emergently took everyone by surprise in this way that what were people expecting in 2000?
Yeah. Well, maybe this analogy is pretty good. Here's one. So ChatGPT and all the earlier incarnations of it, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, all were pretty lame. And then when it got to a certain size, it was a tipping point of, holy shit, this is incredible. Same thing with social media. Many, many attempts at social media have been done before. Stuart and I lived through CompuServe and early AOL and chat rooms and bulletin boards and all of that. But when they got to a certain size, like when Facebook got to X billion users, or when Twitter got to hundreds of millions of users, things happened like Arab Spring, and like there's a tipping point of enough users and enough communication where something new emerges, and you can't predict when that will happen, and you don't know if it will happen. But maybe what happened with social media was so unpredictable in the same way that LLMs are proving to be mind-boggling when they get to a certain size.
That's the key point.
It's the network. Just Bob Metcalf's thing. It's like, when you have the network effect turn on, it like creates different results.
Obviously, you can chat in groups of 10 and you don't get these effects. But when you chat in a group of 10 billion, all of a sudden something very different emerges. Now, something else happened with social media that we didn't anticipate too. I feel that social media was very, very pure for the first 5 years before Facebook turned on advertising, before Twitter turned on advertising, and before they changed the algorithm to cause engagement. Because once there was money in it, now engagement mattered, and engagement had the unintended consequence of hate causes engagement. So that was a thing that maybe we could have predicted, but didn't matter. The money was too good. Did you see the recent book that just came out about Zuckerberg that everybody's talking about?
It's called Careless People, and I'm about two-thirds of the way through it. It's like an incredible read.
It's a good read. Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but I know it's rising. I know Facebook's trying to quash it. But basically, once money got involved, then it just took on a crazy, crazy new thing where it got perverted by the algorithm.
And Zuckerberg knew that too, right? He tried to delay it as much as possible, the advertising, right? I'm pretty sure that he tried to delay it.
No, he delayed it because he had venture capital money, but then we went public, and then you can't delay it anymore after that.
So let's talk about that, the exocortex, and I would love it if because social media is an exocortex, LLMs are going to be another aspect of that exocortex. And in the 1980s and the 1990s, what were the thinking about how the exocortex would evolve? Like, were people looking at PCs as an exocortex, as a second brain that we would somehow pipe together in this?
I don't think people saw that yet. I think we were a little bit too Pollyannish and hopeful that everything was going to be wonderful, and it was for a while. I mean, it felt like the information revolution was going to set everybody free, and there'd be no unintended consequences. And I don't think we anticipated a globally connected planet with algorithms that controlled what we saw and echo chambers as well. So I think
It's
we
not
were
all
an
bad,
early
though, too.
PC, the way I put it is the early PC was, I always think of it like a fraternity, and I did really well with Agenda and my newsletter and stuff like that. It was an ecosystem that actually didn't even affect the larger computer business,
Yeah,
right?
right.
The larger computer business was larger, IBM and all that. And so we created this little ecosystem of personal computers. They weren't plugged into anything. So the only real effect is when spreadsheets started to get the Apple II and then the PC into companies, and companies had to go like, what the hell are these things? And how
But
do they?
Stuart, think back to Agenda and demo, and the 500 of us would show up, and we
Yeah.
were like the whole community of the whole world, and
That
we
was
were like
it.
we were like our own little world, like just outside of everything else, and it was incredible how small it was. I mean, how impactful it was that group, but
And how much fun. These are all
oh,
the disaffected people too. These were the people who were not in fraternities in college. And,
right,
Yeah,
right.
wait.
go to college. That's a
Yeah.
Wait, that's an
But when I
important
look back
part.
at some of the pictures, like you got black and white pictures in some of those books there, and just seeing the people talking around, like Jim Manzi sitting there talking to Bill Gates, and this guy's talking to that guy, just everybody's hanging out. It was pretty hysterical.
Can we talk about, so that was a really interesting piece you just dropped that I'd never heard before, which is that it's the disaffected. They weren't part of fraternities. The early PC industry was not part of an established sort of, like, what was going on there?
Well, there was still an idea that I think a nerd was a little bit of an outcast.
Yeah.
And if you like computers and science and technology, you were a little bit weird. And Stuart, you gathered up all these weirdos together. You gathered us all up together, and we loved it. Oh, like Bob Frankston inventing the spreadsheet, and Dan Bricklin was there, and like all the people who really touched the beginning of the revolution.
So here's the thought, Bill, and I don't know how old you are, but I was born in 1952. So I turned 21 in 1973, and I was a little late getting out of school. So I graduated in 1975, and that's when it was happening, right?
Oh yeah, that's really what was happening, right?
Everybody that was involved in the personal computer was not involved in the technology business, right? So whether you were a nerd or, Tony Morris started the first computer store. And, so all the people that were doing the personal computer were people that were not part of the technology business. And it was an ecosystem. Everybody knew everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all trying to beat each other, but also there wasn't enough really.
It was pretty cordial considering the competition that was going on.
Why weren't they in the technology industry? Are you talking about IBM?
They're too young.
Technology industry?
They were just starting work. They were graduating from college in 1970 to 75.
Interesting.
Well, Bill Gates talks right now about how he and Steve Jobs were born at the exact right time for this. Not too old to already have jobs, not too young to not know how to do what they needed to do. The computer had just come out. The stories were just coming. Like, it was really. I was a little bit too young. I was born in 1958, so I just missed it by a little bit.
But you were
I got into it.
Yeah, you were there.
I got into it after I got into it right when I got out of college, because the IBM PC came out in 1981, right when I graduated. So I was 3 or 4 years behind.
Same thing. I thought I'd missed it. But I got into the personal computer industry. It's already been around for 5 years. It's like, wow, I missed the thing. But now, in retrospect, everybody goes, no, you were like there when it started.
Oh, you were
Same
right there.
Yeah. So you didn't miss it either. So.
It was an incredible time. It's incredible to watch what's happening now.
We've got 3 buckets for the show: PC industry, internet, and mobile. Can we talk more about the transition between the PC and the internet? Because it feels like, Bill, you were right at the right moment in that. What was that transition point? Were there any like dips? Were there any rises? Like particularly like 91? What was going on in 91?
Yeah. So in 1991, boy, I think it was at one of your conferences, Stuart. I saw something that changed my life. Maybe it was 1990. Robert Winter, a music professor from UCLA, showed off multimedia Beethoven. And it was a really, really incredible product that took a CD-ROM and had a hypercard stack that allowed you to explore Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Now, Stuart, was that your conference?
Okay, it might have been. And 91 is when I went back to InfoWorld. So somebody else took over.
So this might have been in 1990. But So I saw this product and the CD-ROM had just come out in PCs. And I said, this is going to change education. This is so exciting. This is going to change education. So I'm going to leave my position at Lotus and start an educational software company, which I did in 1991. And that was called Knowledge Venture. So from 1991 to 1995, I grew Knowledge Venture. I was competing against Broderbund and Reader Rabbit and those products. But I was trying to make a product that made kids fall in love with learning. And what I was doing was making a product that I had to do shrink wrap package software and put in the stores. I have to send it to Target and Walmart and Egghead Software at the time and CompUSA. Some of these are out of business now.
Most of them.
Most of them, right. And Fry's Electronics and all those places. I felt that the idea of making an interactive software product that I have to freeze and put in the box and ship to stores is terrible. And then I saw the browser. I said, oh my God, I can make products that are interactive live with people.
When did you see the browser, just to mark it?
Yeah.
When did you actually install a browser on your computer?
Probably not till 1993, maybe 94. Mosaic, the very first Mosaic.
I was 94. I remember because I was old.
Yeah. So I said, this is going to change everything because now I can make a much more interactive product. And then I said, wait a minute, this isn't going to change educational software. This is going to change the way we use our yellow pages. This is going to change the way we buy tickets. It's going to change the way this is going to change everything. So I said, we sold Knowledge Venture in 1995 successfully to Vivendi. And I said, I need to start companies that take advantage of this new browser technology. And in fact, I want to start a lot of them. And that's what led to starting Idealab. But I lived through the transition in 93, 94, 95. I think in 94, this is pretty funny. My head of IT at Knowledge Venture, we had about 250 people. My head of IT comes in and says, we need to get a URL. I said, what's the URL? Well, it's this thing. It's a name. It has a .com at the end of it. What do you want? Do you want knowledge or you want adventure? I said, I'll take adventure.com. Okay, great. We'll get adventure.com. It was free. Like the idea that there was a time when you could just grab whatever URL you wanted. Nobody had it.
Okay. So I'll tell my equivalent story. I was the editor of InfoWorld and had been since 91 and started reading about the internet. I had to read about it, right? Because there was no internet. And so I asked our IT guy at InfoWorld how do I get this browser, Mosaic, I've heard about. And he said, I'll give you a floppy disk. And I had a Windows machine at the time. So it was a 5.25-inch floppy disk. Might have been 3.5. But, and stuck it in and typed install on the command line. And up came Mosaic. And I'm kind of like, holy fuck, what is this? And I've told this to Stuart before, but I spent probably the next month not paying any attention to InfoWorld, just going 8 hours a day, just trying to figure out what this thing was.
And then remember, we only had a 9600 baud modem at the time if we were lucky.
Well, we had a T1 line. So
you had a T1 line. Wow.
We had a T1 line. So actually,
I didn't have a T1 line. So it was pretty slow, but it was still amazing.
What was the first website that you got engrossed in?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I can't
remember.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I can't do that.
There was no Yahoo yet.
Yahoo actually, was Yahoo available then? No,
I don't think Yahoo started until like 1994.
Maybe 5.
Here, let me.
Because this is in the murky time where it was not clear, right? .edu and
there are only a few things. January of 1994 is when Yahoo started. In 93 there was no Yahoo.
you were just probably like going on educational sites, maybe the government had sites up.
You would have to go buy magazines to read about websites. Literally, you'd read a magazine to find out what new websites were out there that were good.
Magazines?
People would write lists of good websites in magazines, and you tear them out and then go browse them later.
What magazines?
I went. I'm running a magazine, a weekly magazine. On Fridays we'd close and then distribute by Monday. This was instant. So I got it right away, and we got InfoWorld.com. I don't remember how I got it, but it was available. And so we created a website called InfoWorld Electric. And
really?
I was trying to figure out how to distinguish between what was on the web and what we were printing. And InfoWorld Print and InfoWorld Electric made sense to me.
Yeah.
I love this. I love this strain.
Going through incredible transformation right now too. I feel like this period we're seeing with AI right now is very analogous to the mid 90s,
Yeah.
but faster and more impactful because it touches everything. Like it just touches everything.
So I started using Perplexity for my
Yeah,
search.
it's really great.
And
Yeah,
even
it's
if
really
I do a Google search, of course, Google delivers me the Gemini results, but but Perplexity is better. And
It's
it's
really
like,
good. Well,
and it's
check
funny.
out mine. Mine is called gist.ai. This is a shameless plug, but check out gist.ai and tell me
Okay.
what you think. The only difference is it's working to be like Perplexity, but we give credit to all the sources and we share revenue with them.
Oh,
So
wait,
it's a
so
more
this is,
fair, ethical. Yeah.
so this is related to Pro-rata.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
So
interesting.
Pro-rata's product is the advertising product that uses an LLM to make better ads, and the search product called Gist, which is really trying to be fair to copyright holders.
Very cool. And this goes back to the theme, the arc, the thread that I can tell in this, which is that, and it's a question that's been brewing on the back of my mind for a while, which is in 94, in 95, you had to go to magazines in order to figure out what's on the web. Before that, you just had the magazine and you just had the publishing. And this is a conversation me and my dad get into a lot, is like media, publishing, like the idea of a deadline. I didn't realize until I think 2 weeks ago that the reason we have a deadline is because the printing press needed to go out at a certain time.
Yeah, right.
And so that thread of like searching for something that we want. What was search before? Before search, before the internet, before the browser?
Yellow Pages. It was Yellow Pages.
You just go to the Yellow Pages.
Yeah, it's crazy.
In the 1600s.
Or you go to the library. Like you go to the library.
A friend. Or ask a friend.
Or you had a telephone book.
Yeah.
To look up phone numbers.
Yeah.
And so what does it do to us as a species to just immediately find whatever we're looking for? Which we're now in that period.
Well, and it's even evolving, I believe, over the next few years to you will be walking down the street with your AirPods and just asking questions and getting the answers or getting them in your glasses. It will become even more seamless than it is now, because natural language understanding is now good enough to understand your intent so well. Unlike Siri, which was the dream. Siri and early Alexa. I know they just came out with a new Alexa that has better AI in it. But the early versions of Siri and Alexa.
I just have to say, my phone lit up when you use that word, SIRI.
But the early versions of those didn't deliver. But now it does deliver. Now you can have a conversation in real time with such low latency with an AI that you'll just have a companion to answer your questions. And I think there'll be different companions you use for different things, and there'll be different subscription services you use with different content. So maybe there'll be a subscription service that has higher quality reviews or answers, and then there's the one powered by the crowd, which is trust your friends, or your friend network answers as well. But it really, really is going to be, think of anything you need in life, and there'll be something at your beck and call right away.
So just to give you a little sense of how fast we're moving, I just put in chat a link to an article from 2017 called Elon Musk's Future Shock.
Yeah.
So this is 8 years ago.
Wow, I want to read it. Yeah.
And if you read the articles, I just saw Maureen Dowd being interviewed. And they mentioned this, and I went and looked it up. And it's remarkable because this is right after Elon Musk and Sam Altman started OpenAI. Is it not?
Right. That was the same year, right?
Yes. The future. And and then she talked to Peter Thiel, and she taught all of the people in Silicon Valley in 2017.
Wow, that's
now
incredible.
They're all like libertarians and sucking up to Trump, and it's like, and just in those 8 years, and during those 8 years, it started. Right. And all this stuff was going on. And then ChatGPT 3.5 came out, and boom, that was like,
right.
Now we're 2 years out. Is that right? And it's amazing the pace of change. Seeing something like this, like we didn't know anything. We didn't.
Thank you for sharing that. I'll read that. It looks really interesting.
Yeah. And it seems like that your group, your fraternity, basically was the first. Like, there's never been a period like this in history until the PC industry. And that's the first time. I mean, maybe there's analogous in the printing press. Printing press is an interesting one. It's not as quick, but over 100 years, you have the printing press. Right. And
the other period that might be like this would be in the Renaissance in Florence, when the printing press came out, when Michelangelo was causing his works, when Leonardo was drawing in his notebooks. But the reach was very, very The reach was as far as they could carry the output on a horse.
Yeah.
So it was very slow. So the radius was small. Like Leonardo's ideas could reach from Florence to Milan or barely to Rome, because that took 2 months, to travel to Rome. So this pace is just, it's like that with all the minds in the planet working on it. But look at where basically DeepSeek was an incredible moment, just showing how brilliant people somewhere else can do more with less and take the same ideas and make it open source. And the open source movement is another new thing that has never happened.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about open source. Like, when did open source enter the picture?
Oh, well, I think Linux was the biggest shock of it, but Stuart, you probably followed that more than I did even.
Yeah, I told Stuart to go read a book called, come on,
Eric Raymond.
Eric Raymond.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
Well, the famous quote of Newton, building on the shoulders of giants. Open source allows that to happen in real time. You don't have to wait till someone dies to read what they did to go build upon it. You see it the day they publish it, and they make noise with it, and it becomes searchable across the whole world. So open source is really causing a revolution that we've never seen before as well.
Well, and you go all the way back, the kernel of the Macintosh operating system as it is today actually started with Unix and then Linux, right? Because Jobs used that as the basis for NextOS, and then Apple bought Next.
Yep.
And it's remarkable what they've done with that operating system. Built their own chipsets, and migrated from from Motorola to Intel to ARM, and the technical infrastructure of the Macintosh is pretty remarkable.
So and it's text-based, right? That kernel is all a text-based thing. And that's the craziest thing that I've noticed. There's a lot of hype in terms of AI, but one of the ways that it's not hyped is this sort of vibe coding idea. Not necessarily vibe coding as a discipline, but the idea that this is really going to change coding itself. And coding is language. And so do you think that the computing stack that we currently have is going to need a re-architecture in order to communicate with LLMs? Like, what do you think the interface between LLMs with these linguistic sort of ghosts in the machine and coding?
Yeah, no, I think the computing stack is English. In fact, I always, for many, many years, again, talk about being too early, but now the revolution is possible. I wanted to make a programming language called English. I wanted to say, this is a new programming language where you just describe what you want and you get it. And now that is here. And that is here not because someone stopped to make a programming language called English. It's here because the computer can now understand that. And of course, English has a lot of ambiguity, but the software now can probabilistically remove a lot of that ambiguity, check with you, and then you can correct it. And it's just incredible. It's incredible that that's actually possible right now.
So Stuart is not a programmer. So he calls himself an AI whisperer, and he is doing vibe coding. He's trying to create programs by telling the AI what to do.
Isn't it incredible?
It's and I've got one running right now. So I had to remember, one of you guys reminded me that I had to turn it on, which is a problem because now I need to go fix it so that I can do it at all times. But I turned it on in the middle of a show, and it's waiting into a specific folder on my computer, and it's waiting for our audio files to be close out so that it'll start a transcription. And I did not code anything in it. It was all the AI that coded the whole thing. It works every time.
No, it's really, really incredible. I think a lot of people say coding is going to go away. I think coding is going to increase because everyone will be able to take the idea they have in their head and implement it by thinking through what are they trying to achieve. And that just moves. Coding has always been moving up a layer of abstraction from the machine language at the beginning. All the way up. And now we've just gone to a higher level of abstraction, which is the abstraction by which we communicate with one another. And that is really incredible.
Bill,
that happened in our lifetime is incredible. Like when I think back to how primitive it was.
So Stuart, in this thing that's sitting there waiting for us to finish, why can't it do it in real time? Can it listen to us and transcribe what we're saying in real time?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could use Fireflies to do that. But that I tried to do something like that, and it needed something called a WebSocket. And we can go into the technical details of this, but essentially, this is the core problem, and I'm actually working on a way to teach this to other people because this is not something that is intuitive. It's because I don't need to learn how to code anymore. The AI will be better at coding than me in a year. It's like there's no way I catch up to that. But I do need to learn something. So what is it that I need to learn? Well, I need to learn the names, the proper nouns, the entities of these new technologies in order to know what they do, so that I can direct the thing. Like that's like, it's not that I don't need to learn anything. It's like I need to learn one thing. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, no, I agree. Each layer of abstraction that changes requires a new set of tools and a new set of understanding, but it's more powerful. It's more powerful each time.
So can you still write machine code?
I can't, no, or I just haven't in so long.
So do you program at all? Do you write code at
No,
all?
no. I don't. Now everything is about thinking through what do people need and how can I find a way to fill that need with a business as opposed to fill that need.
When did that happen? What year did that happen? Did you realize that, oh, I don't need to code anymore. I just need a business to do this?
Yeah, that was probably in the middle of the internet era, in the middle of the 90s, when it was really more about figuring out what are the business models that matter, not what does each line of code matter as much. And it really changed. Now, it also happened that I just organized myself differently because of my companies, but definitely big change in the last 20 years.
How many companies have you funded in Idealab?
Well, now we started 150 companies over the last 30 years. Actually, we just had our 29th birthday on Pi Day. So one more year will be our 30th anniversary. It'll be 3 decades of doing Idealab. Really, really proud of it.
I just had 5 thoughts and they collided. Okay. Stuart, step in.
Okay, no, I've been wanting to ask it. I've got a personal question that really started this podcast. I became the director of knowledge management at a 2,000 person company a couple of years ago. It was really important for the AI boom. They were doing the RLHF, reinforcement learning through human feedback. And so previous to that, I didn't know what knowledge management was. I only did knowledge management for myself. And then
I just will say this started because Stuart called me up and said, I got this job. What the hell is knowledge management?
What is it? I had no idea. And then I found out there's this discipline, and it's the most interdisciplinary of all the disciplines.
Right.
And so it's like I've got this personal sort of white whale of figuring out how do you get a whole bunch of people to share knowledge.
Agreed.
And what's your takeover? You've done it.
I've always wanted to make something. Well, that early product I made, Magellan, was trying to help find the nuggets of knowledge and maybe share it. But I think that finding a way to give people knowledge just in time, meaning right when they need it, like almost by anticipating, looking at what they're working on and saying, what piece of wisdom or knowledge is there in this company that'd be beneficial to this person right at this moment? So as not to bombard them, but to be of high value. And I think there's a huge opportunity to do that.
Lotus Notes.
Yeah.
That was the whole idea behind Lotus Notes. The problem is that they forced you to use Lotus Notes to do it.
Right, exactly.
Wait, go into that. What do you mean?
Yeah. Well, there was a product.
Ray Ozzie, who we should probably do this with too, but he came
Ray
up
Ozzie.
with the
Ray Ozzie was a very, very pioneering thinker about this.
So Lotus Notes was essentially a way to store knowledge in a company, all the things that people knew in different departments, and put it into a central repository that then was accessible to every employee of the company. And the problem was you had to use Lotus Notes to do it, right? That was the user interface and the system. And so part of what Bill's talking about is that we're finally getting to the point where you can do that without being forced to use a particular program.
And there's an example of an application that someone could make that would be built on top of a foundational model, but wouldn't have to develop a foundational model, that watches my life and what I'm working on, and then makes valuable suggestions to me from company information that would be helpful to me. That's a killer application. I can't believe that companies won't go after that a Microsoft and others won't. But even you bringing it up today, Stuart, it's got me thinking. So maybe that'll be another company we start.
So one of the things I'm on, and I'm about to write an open letter to Tim Cook, first open letter I've written in quite a long time, saying that it would probably be a good time for him to retire because he allowed Apple to introduce Apple Intelligence when they didn't actually know how to do it. It's the absolute definition of vaporware. And they finally had to admit that they don't know how to do it. And
it's incredible.
And I think it's going to corrupt the fundamental trust that Apple has with its users, whether iPhone or Macintosh, to the point where they're going to struggle going forward. And I think they need new leadership.
Yeah, interesting.
I just did that. That's good. I'll write that.
Well, and despite saying that, Um, Look at what Tim Cook has done. I never thought that after Steve Jobs left, you could 10 times the value of that company.
More
Like,
than 10, actually, I think. But
yeah,
the thing that is most amazing is that he's integrated the company all the way back down to the chipset, right?
yeah,
The Apple chipset is the most
yeah,
advanced
yeah,
set of processors uh, completely now. And so the argument I'm making is,
yeah. I
and
know, I know.
see if you resonate this,
Yeah.
but Tim
Well,
Cook's been running the company for 20 years.
despite their fumbles in AI, they have done an amazing, amazing
Yeah,
job for sure.
and it's absolutely worth $4 trillion. And so, well, maybe not after the last
Yeah,
week, but
yeah,
but the thing is that he's kept his team together. He's done
yeah,
such an incredible job that I
yeah,
don't think there's anybody in senior management at Apple that understands AI, right?
yeah,
They don't know, understand what the point is. So they just kind of made it up when they announced it at WWDC last year or a year and a half ago. And they just made up what they wanted it to be, but they didn't have any idea how to do that, right? And
yeah,
what you're talking about is exactly that. They have on this device, they have my entire personal history and
yeah,
everything going forward. And so if in real time they can help me, stop having to put up with my
right,
calendar and my
right,
email and all that kind of crap, this would
right.
become a magical
Yeah.
device.
Yeah.
And
Well, here's one thing, and it's maybe part of the natural cycle of a company. Um, uh, Part innovator's dilemma, but part why a small startup can compete at all, which is the expectations from Apple, though, are so high,
Mm,
mm,
and the expectations from a startup are lower.
mm,
And even take the example of Google inventing the transformer, but not shipping it because the expectations would be too high on Google. Google
yeah,
could get a black eye. OpenAI can't.
yeah,
OpenAI, another company, if they blow it and it gives some hallucinations, sometimes they don't get their market cap doesn't go down because no one has a market cap. It's not even public yet,
yeah,
and they can weather it. And this is why sometimes companies might have to acquire from a smaller company the right
yeah.
way. Well, actually, Apple acquired Siri. Sorry to trigger your phone again.
Well,
Apple,
like 20 years ago, but
yeah, yeah, no, a long time ago. But sometimes the innovation to do something bold and new has to come from somewhere else because there's too much of a black eye if the company doesn't do it right. The problem with this situation you're saying with Apple is the integration required to do a great job on your iPhone that you held up can only be done by Apple because they've
yeah,
they've blocked it off from anybody else doing
yeah,
oh, it's
that.
totally closed system. Yeah.
It's all closed. So someone can't practice and do that and then show it to Apple because it's a blocked off system. But you're right. All your information is there
Yeah.
between your phone and the cloud. There's so much about you. It should be a life-changing opportunity, but it's very, very hard to pull off.
And they recognized that opportunity,
Yep.
but they just
Yep.
didn't hook it up to actually what they could do.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yep. You're
this
right.
this expectation and the brand is really interesting because it gets to Western civilization and the idea of property rights, the idea that an entity can be somehow be transcend the group of humans that are currently at it and then
Yeah.
exist out into the future. Like it's an abstraction that, like talking about programming abstractions, we've got this abstraction for Western civilization that seems unique. Like it seems like it only happened in Western civilization. Any thoughts on that? Of like, and it applies to governments as well. It's something I think a lot about with our current U.S. government is that it's a system that's been set up over 250 years that is now facing some really crazy things, basically. And it feels like that abstraction now needs to change. And can it change in the way that it needs
Yeah.
to change?
Well,
Well, I
only if you
think
have
that I
somebody that corrupt.
yeah, I think it's not only Western because
Mm,
you've got
mm,
applications in China that have 1 billion people on them. Here's what I think is the challenge. You now have companies that have the personal data of hundreds of millions, if not billions of people,
oh,
and that is more powerful than governments.
yeah,
And yet they're companies. They're not governments. They weren't elected. They don't have the ability for the public who uses them to change their rules or laws. So it's a complicated world where you have many companies. By the way, some of these companies have market caps bigger than the GDPs of countries. So they are really, really powerful because we gave them that power with our data and with our usage. Now they gave us something in return. They gave us value. Otherwise, we wouldn't work with them, right? If people wouldn't stay on Facebook if it didn't give them value, people wouldn't keep using Google if it didn't give them value. But the idea that companies can become so much more valuable than countries or governments, that's the new thing. That was never possible before. And it's an amazing new world.
yeah,
I think Stuart, I'd say China Inc.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got one guy running the place, and he was pretty smart, particularly 20 years ago. Who knows if he can keep it up? China Inc. is a company.
Yeah. Yeah. But even as you were saying, though, Stuart, there are companies in China that have 1 billion users too.
Yeah.
Not Western, billion users only in their country, and they're very powerful. And Xi has had challenges dealing with those companies that have gotten so powerful, and he pushed back at them. Now he's giving them some more freedom again. Like he just welcomed Jack Ma back again now, and Alibaba's back in their favor. And
As
all
long
that.
as you do what I tell you to do, you're welcome.
Right. Right. So things are changing, but it just shows the tension between countries and companies.
Yeah.
And cultures. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then well, okay. Well, we're at the hour, so thank you so much, Bill.
Yeah,
Bill, this was a blast.
Yeah.
I think we could do this several times, but
Yeah. It was a great conversation. Thank you for taking me down memory lane, and I hope that was helpful to listeners.
Thank you so much.